talking loud. If it's not loud enough, I'll make the microphone louder. Wow. What? It sounds good now, but didn't sound good before. Hello. All right. Which one is it? This is coming from there. There. They didn't label any of these, so
we'll live.
Not gonna mess
Plus,
with
we're
it.
loud. We yell.
It's fine. No, there's a Wi-Fi back there. All right, let's start by playing.
We got 5 minutes.
Yes, we'll play our typical convention games. Game number 1. Who came the farthest to reach us here today? We came from New York City. Who came from further? Further than New York City. Where'd you come from? Vermont. Yeah, no one's further. Further than Minnesota? No? Someone in the back? Montana's further than Minnesota?
We were talking about Montana in the car.
Are you further than Montana? It's a little bit further.
Are you by chance a hockey fan?
Okay. All right. What's our second game?
Who has the oldest saved game? Save file.
I have an 1986 gold Zelda cartridge with a save game in it. So who has a save game older than that?
Wow, we're really old.
Okay, we're there.
So the best answer we ever got was at a PAX.
The last at
someone
PAX
raised their
Unplugged,
hand.
someone had a character sheet that they had inherited from their parents or grandpa or someone's grandpa's character sheet.
There's a lot to unpack in an inherited character sheet, let alone a character sheet is a save game.
Yeah. What was our other game that we play? Who's been to the most MAGFests, I guess?
We've been to every MAGFest in the Gaylord except during the weird times, which we don't need to worry about.
I've been to a MAGFest that was before this building, at least once or twice.
So did anyone go to MAGFest before it was in the Gaylord? So
besides you were there at this. Okay.
You're like the Duke of MAGFest. So the thing about old MAGFest is in some ways it was cooler because it was all in one hotel the entire time for the whole weekend. It was almost like a weird close-knit family. But 2, it smelled really bad. And you're thinking like, oh no, yeah, of course, no. It smelled really bad because there were not enough hotel rooms in the hotel.
That hotel also does not have enough hotel rooms.
And there were there was like one elevator.
There were
that
2
barely
elevators instead of 4 or 6 or whatever it is over there.
It was clear that people were rationing showers. And we didn't know how bad it smelled until we left the convention to go out and get some breakfast somewhere. And when we walked back in, we're like, what's that smell? Oh no, that's us.
Yeah, it would basically, whenever you got in the elevator, because it would come so rarely, people would get in the elevator and be like, elevator party.
The best moment of that old MAGFest, though, is that was when I first encountered the Colossus Roar. Y'all know the Colossus Roar. I'm not going to do it because...
Wow, we have not heard one, actually, since I got here.
I haven't heard one yet.
I haven't heard one yet, until just now.
We got a bunch of panels to do, so I'm not going to do one yet, because that's hard on the voice, especially when you're 42.
I'm sure there's some technique to doing it better.
Well, you got to do a vocal like Fry, but in the second half of it, you got to be like...
I thought you said you weren't going to do it. Yeah. I'm not going to do this thing that I'm actually going to do.
That's my go-to move.
You can't trust this guy.
But we're at this old MAGFest, so we're hanging out, and we're tired, we're done for the day, and we're staying at a hotel nearby, so we walk out to get into the shuttle.
Yeah, we had to take a shuttle. There was a shuttle from the...
And as the doors to the hotel open, someone does the Colossus Roar inside, and off in the woods outside the hotel, someone responded with a Colossus Roar.
That did happen.
All right, we got 2 minutes left, so I guess the last
people are actually coming. Yeah. Okay, I don't know why you've chosen to come here.
How many of you, this is your first MAGFest?
Whoa!
All right. MAGFest is one hell of a con, so Godspeed and good luck.
Well, we'll see if this is the last MAGFest. Who knows?
Every MAGFest could be the last MAGFest.
Every MAGFest could be the last one.
So one last question. Do any of you know who we are?
Yeah, some of the people.
Yeah, a few people.
Yeah, the people we know who they are.
Good.
That's
so for those of you who don't, you might be about to be really disappointed for the next hour. But if you enjoy this, I will say that we are doing 4 panels at this MAGFest. We do a lot of panels at MAGFest every year. If you enjoyed this panel, grab one of these flyers or type that word Geek Nights into the internet, type it into anything, you'll find us. We've been podcasting since 2005. We've been presenting at every MAGFest, every PAX, we're everywhere. If you do not enjoy the next hour, 1, walk out. Like if a panel's bad, hit the bricks. But 2,
you
take
could
a
be
flyer anyway.
You could be in the MAGFest arcade instead of here. I would suggest that, but it seems like that my suggestion isn't having any influence.
Because they keep bringing us back. We've done like 400 plus panels over the last few years.
Not at MAGFest.
No, at conventions. We've done like 30 or 40 panels at MAGFest over the years.
About, yeah.
But if you don't enjoy this, grab a flyer and find a staffer and make sure they don't let us come back.
Yeah, I see some staff people in the back. You tell them that we suck, and then we won't be back here.
All right, it's 5 o'clock, so we're going to act like this whole opening banter didn't happen and just get going like nothing. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
We are the hosts of a podcast called Geek Nights, and we're here today to ask a question. And the thing about asking a question in the name of the title of a panel is that the answer is always no. So, can competitive and casual coexist in the same game?
No.
They can't.
No.
Now, you might be thinking, yes, they can. If you think that, and you are right, you're going to be a billionaire, because you're going to make the most popular game that has ever been made. So, the reason we did this panel, the reason we put this together is many years ago, Fortnite released a minor change. You know, Fortnite's an evolving game. Things change in Fortnite. They add stuff to the game. They remove stuff from the game.
I like how 2019 is many years ago.
2019 is many years ago.
Feels like many years ago.
2019 is the before times. Everyone alive today is going to be off by about 3 years when we say any date just for some reason. So anyway, Fortnite. Fortnite's a fun game. If you never played it, like, I don't know how you got to this point in the world. Fortnite's one of those popular games to ever have been made. But they made a patch, and this patch very slightly rewarded players for killing other players. Like, more so than the normal reward. You get some shield back.
Yeah, it's a lot like, a beat-em-up game. When you beat up guys, sometimes they drop coins on the ground or meat or something,
yeah.
Right? And Fortnite used to be that when you killed someone, well, you just got congratulations, you're alive, and they're not.
And whatever weapons they happen to be carrying, like you're going to loot their corpse, of course.
Right, but now this patch was like, hey, you kill someone, there might be like health boosts or other kinds of bonuses, right? And sort of creates a steamrolling effect where if you got a lot of kills over time and you encounter someone who's like been hiding in the woods, they're not going to have anything. You're probably going to take them out and add to your strengths.
So this minor change to the mechanics of Fortnite caused a ridiculous uproar. It also drove a ton of people away from the game. It attracted a different audience to the game, and it was such a disaster that they actually rolled it back and kind of said they'll never do a release like this again.
This is from the company. This isn't like some insider, right? It's like Epic says, right?
Yep.
Right in the headline there. The Epic people admitted, yeah, we made that change, really made people play a lot less.
And all this change did, we're going to talk about it in more detail later in the panel after we have brought some concepts to bear. But essentially, this change increased the reward a player would get if they were good at the game and were doing well. And what this meant is that someone who is good at Fortnite would become better at Fortnite. So if the average player of Fortnite is having fun, like building castles and chatting with their friends and whatever Fortnite kids do, but one old jerk decides to run around killing all those kids, we've ruined the game for them and made the game more competitive for us. And the people like us who complained to Epic saying, hey, the game's got to be more competitive, Epic basically backed off and said, you know what? We don't want the game to be that competitive. You have Counter-Strike. You have PUBG. You have all these other games. Leave the kids alone. So this is a pretty common story in games. Anyone who's played old games, any RTS, you'll have the friend who's like, hey, let's just build bases for a while and then have a fight. Because if you actually play the game seriously, the game's not fun unless you're really good at it. This is a story as old as competitive games have existed.
Right. I mean, the fun stuff, RTS to be an example, right? The fun stuff is to build all the big stuff, right? It's like no one wants to only build infantry and then the game's over. Building infantry is boring and kind of boring, right? It's like you want to build dragons and giant starships and whatever. And if you lose after that happens, it's like, okay, I lost, but at least I got to have fun doing all this amazing, using my high-powered action, right? Which is why you want no rush. Give me 20 minutes so I can have all the fun in the game, building everything. And then if I lose, who cares?
Yeah. Right? So if you play an old RTS with a friend and you both agree to this, then you're having fun together, and it's a fun activity. But if you're playing with some rando on the internet and they say, hey, buddy, 20 minutes, no rush, The correct answer is yes, followed by an immediate Zerg rush.
That's correct.
Because you're not trying to have fun with that person. You're not trying to let them have fun. If your goal is to win the game, you're going to do whatever wins the game. And whatever wins the game is not whatever's fun for most people who play games on Earth. So we've experienced this. Is anyone here good at air hockey? Yeah, nobody's bold enough to raise their hand. You play air hockey once a year at a bar.
We are not good at air hockey, but we are better than the average person who barely ever plays air hockey.
Anyone good at Street Fighter? Will your friends play Street Fighter with you if you're good at Street Fighter? So we're good at air hockey, but we're not professional at air hockey.
Yeah, if I face a professional at air hockey, I basically will just get scored on immediately all the time, right? But if I play just a person off the street, it's like I'm going to dominate them. They have no chance because I've put some amount of thought and practice into air hockey, like a few minutes or some hours worth, right?
It was so funny. We talked a big game about air hockey like 15 years ago on the podcast, and the Professional Air Hockey Association was like, "Oh, you talked about our game, and you talked like you were good. You want to come to a tournament?" And
we're like, "No."
I watched a video, one of those tournaments. Yeah, they don't hold the air hockey thing like this. They have this 2-finger grip so they can whip it around like a sling. And they break their fingers doing it. Yeah. So this happens. And if you get good at anything, if you are good at a competitive game, you will find that the only people you can play games with are other competitive people. It's not fun to play air hockey against someone who's not trying to win if you're trying to win for either of you. So you might have heard a term, card shark. Would you believe the actual term was originally card sharp with a P? And all a card sharp was somebody who played card games, old-timey games like whist, but they'd actually try to win and they'd like count cards. And most people who played whist considered that to be unfair or unsporting, and they called it sharp. You don't want to play cards with a sharp player because they're going to memorize the cards and they're going to play really well and you're going to lose.
Yeah, they weren't cheating, right? They weren't, mixing
I mean, the guy in that painting's cheating.
Sure, well,
and
yes.
He's got a knife, but...
Maybe. But it's like you could be considered a card sharp, not cheating, not, looking at cards, not slipping any sleight of hand, right? You just actually tried to win. Thought about it really hard, right? Paid attention to the game, didn't just get drunk while playing, right? Actually looking at the cards, and people didn't want to play against people like that because it's like, hey, I keep losing to you all the time, and this game is for money, so let's not do this.
If Smash Brothers existed back then, we would definitely have Smash Sharps, and it would be anyone who ever dodged. So what you have to think about is what are you playing a game for and who are you playing a game with? And Star Wars is a good example of a community around something, to use a non-game example. I might be into Star Wars because I'm a film buff. I might be into Star Wars because I play Star Wars games. I might be into Star Wars and I primarily engage via LARPing. Might be into Star Wars because I engage in trivia. I might write fan fiction. I might write erotic fan fiction. All these people are in the Star Wars community on the surface, but yet their interests don't actually overlap except the intellectual property or at the center of which they all orbit.
Yeah, even just look at MAGFest, right? It's like you could say, I'm going to join the MAGFest community, right? Well, is that the go to the concerts and mosh community? Is that the hang out in the arcade and play Initial D nonstop community?
Is it that drunk guy?
Is it the come to the panel and waste your time when you could be in the arcade community? Right? Which community is it at MAGFest that you're part of? The cosplay by the gazebo community, right? Even though we can all chill together because we're all cool people, right? It's like, how much do our interests actually align? They might align. They might not. But just because we have MAGFest in common doesn't really necessarily mean that we have anything else in common.
Really, think about all of you. All of you are here at the Music and Games Festival. There is music and games happening, and you're in a room listening to two guys give an academic lecture.
I still don't understand why, but okay.
So when people assume that because they all like the same thing, they like it for the same reasons, then when they try to engage with each other, that mismatch might happen. If the erotic Star Wars fanfiction person wants to engage with the, Star Wars VR Online Squadrons game person, they have nothing to talk about.
And so if you look at a game, people who play Fortnite, even within that specific thing, people who play Fortnite, There are people who like it and enjoy it in different ways and for different reasons. And those people, even though they're in the Fortnite community together, right? And you think, yes, those people will be friends. They both love Fortnite. They actually have nothing in common because they enjoy it for completely different reasons, play it in different ways, engage with it differently. And neither one of them is wrong, right? There's not like one person's doing it the right way and one person's doing it the wrong way. It's just they don't mix. They're oil and water, right? Oil tastes good. Water hydrates. They're both good. Just don't go together.
So again, another interesting example. Let's look at sports, which are games, nerds. Like, sports are games. There's no difference between them whatsoever. We're fans of ice hockey. You might have heard of it. It's a really, really fun sport.
To watch.
Yeah. I played roller hockey as a kid. I was middling.
I like to keep all my teeth where they are.
But think about the community around a professional sport like ice hockey. The fans and the players engage with the game in radically different ways. There's a football thing going on right now, like a pretty important football thing if you care about football. What do you think the person who's watching the football game cares about versus the person who is footballing the football game?
They both love football. That's about where it ends, right?
So competitive games end up putting us in this really interesting space, especially because a lot of people do not like to introspect. They don't like to think about why they like things, and they don't like to think about how they engage with the things they like. So as a result, you might have a person who says they like competition. Just like you have that friend who says they like to argue and they freak out anytime you argue with them. You've got the friend who says they want to play a really serious Magic the Gathering, and then they flip the fucking table when you actually play Magic the Gathering for real and try to win.
Right. It's like, they collect the cards, they're building a deck, they're having a grand old time, they're playing with their brother or their sister at home, they're having right? And then they go to the tournament at the store, and then they're like, I hate this is garbage.
Yep.
Right?
So what specifically happened in Fortnite in detail? There's one community within the Fortnite community, and the utility they get out of the game, what they like to do in Fortnite is engage with all the fun stuff in Fortnite.
Build buildings, collect
build buildings,
skins,
go do a quest, find a new area,
watch a concert, listen to a concert.
If you haven't played Fortnite, there's like bosses. You're playing this competitive game, but there's like a boss you can just fight optionally if you want to for funsies.
Explore the plot.
But the competitive player, they want to kill children. They want to be the last person standing. So this tiny mechanical change, what it specifically did is the player who is playing to win would be rewarded by killing the other players. So as a result, even if those players might take a different strategy, they were encouraged to be more aggressive. And the more aggressive the competitive players were, the less everyone else got to engage with the game.
Because they died.
Yeah, they're trying to fight the boss, and I sniped them from a mountain. They're trying to do a quest, and I sniped them from the mountain. Kids aren't good at sniper rifles. So when you have two communities in one game, it never works. There's never been a game in history that can support both communities at the same time. There are games that appear like they do, but technically, it's two different games. It's two different modes.
Or more than two.
Yeah, many modes. How many games have a casual mode and a competitive mode?
You go look at Magic the Gathering, which you've already brought up. It's like, you can go in the super extreme, constructed tournament, but other people, they just play the draft mode or the commander mode or the planes whatever mode, right? And there's all these other ones where you can have a good time, but it's not really so serious, right? And then there's the ultra serious ones, and those actually tend to be the least popular. Right? Just like in Fortnite. It's like, they made the game more competitive, and it says it made people play less. Well, I mean, if competition was popular, wouldn't that make people play more? And that's true. The thing is, the fact that we have discovered is that, in fact, the majority of people, only a small minority, most people do not want real competition. You might want it. You might be one of those rare people like us. Most people on the earth do not want to actually test their skills and see how strong they are and compare it to another human being because they don't want to find out that they're actually worse than someone else.
Now, meanwhile, I am a garbage DPS in Overwatch. Like, I am low silver at best. But you know what? You know how you tell if you're the kind of person who actually likes competition? If you're just as happy to win as you are to lose. If you enjoy losing, you probably like competition. Because if I win a game, I don't learn anything. I'm great. I'm the best. F you all. If I lose a game, then I have learned that I am, in fact, not the best. And I can watch the replay to figure out how Scott got me.
The people who really enjoy competition are people who will, when they lose, be basically angry and energized and practice and study and, put their entire effort into becoming better so that they can win next time. If people who just get discouraged and are unhappy and give up, those people are not competitive people, and that's the majority of people. Because if it wasn't the majority of people, Fortnite would have gotten more players by becoming more competitive, right?
So if we break it down in a little more detail, we're going to keep getting deeper and deeper, and eventually we're going to bring up a bunch of game theory terms. But let's break down these two types of players in terms of what they want out of a game. Competitive players. We want the best player to win. If you're watching the NHL Stanley Cup, even though you want your home team to win, you want the best hockey people on earth to have won that game.
Yeah, it would be really kind of sad. Like, it would leave a bad taste in everyone's mouth, including the winners, if they won because of some, bad called penalty or a goal got overturned. That was so obviously a goal, right? Or it got kicked in, but they didn't call it a kick. And
there was no distinct kicking motion.
Right, or, it would have to, it'd be
Only
really
two people
upsetting.
are NHL fans. Only 2 people reacted to that.
Okay.
Appropriate skills are tested. So think about Counter-Strike as a game. What is Counter-Strike testing fundamentally? It's testing whether or not you can click on heads that are moving around. Nothing else matters. Just click on heads.
Other things matter if you can click on the heads.
Yep.
If you can click on the heads, then, all right, we've tested that skill. That's the baseline. If you can do that, now we'll test some other skills to sort of separate amongst all the people who can click on heads who's better. But if you can't click on heads, none of your other skills matter. You're just going to get your head clicked on.
But like a MOBA, you don't have to click on heads. You got to have a high APM. Like, you're engaging with the game in a very different way. Competitive players think a lot about what is being tested in a game because that is the thing they want to be tested in themselves. They want the competition to be fair.
Except the cheaters.
Yep, except for cheaters. Cheaters are weird because they're both competitive.
That's a different
and bad.
panel. Different panel.
We do have a whole panel on that. But we want competition to be fair. The competitive player does want it to be absolutely fair in all cases. So I would argue someone who smurfs is not a competitive player. They're just a jerk. Competitive players want the game to end when it ends. You've all played Monopoly. The game ended 4 hours ago, but it didn't really end. You're trapped there. An ice hockey game, it ends when the final whistle blows. They could theoretically score the goals they need to win the game, even if they're behind. The game's not over until it's over. But the moment someone cannot win a game, the game has to end. Otherwise, for a competitive player, we're wasting our time. We don't like randomness. You don't want randomness in a game. Competitive players probably don't want to play just casino because it is pretty much just random.
Yeah. I mean, there are some kinds of randomness that are literally just random. Like, hey, let's play coin toss, right? It's like, sure, you might be good at tossing coins and cheating, or we know that coins aren't perfectly balanced, whatever, right? But the point is, there's no skill in coin toss, right? We're going to find out who wins. Candyland, there's no skill in Candyland. You just find out who wins by revealing cards. There's no, right? There are some games that have luck elements, random elements, but you can mitigate the luck or deal with the luck, right? And thus, as long as the skill part of the game dominates the luck, as long as the player's decisions, right, are what determines who's going to win, and the randomness just provides for more interesting play and not necessarily decides who's going to win, then the randomness can be tolerated, right? But if you notice, a lot of the biggest, most competitive games that there are, like, say, chess, have, no randomness whatsoever.
And this last one, player rankings are accurate. This is a really spicy one. Even people who engage with all these competitive systems, you will find when the game tells them this is how skilled you are, they will always say that that is bullshit, that they are way better than that their team is dragging them down, that there's some reason it was cloudy on that day. There's some reason why that number is wrong. But a truly competitive player, that ranking is just how they have matchmaking, because a competitive player wants to always be playing with people who are about their skill level, because that is the most fun you can have, is a worthy opponent. How about the casual player? That's just a whole list of things. They want to do literally anything else. Winning is not the thing they're after. They're after every other part of the game.
They just want to play.
So in the Fortnite situation, it came down to 20% of the players wanted the best player to win a match of Fortnite, and everybody else just wanted to not get killed in the first few seconds. So there's literally no way to reconcile that.
That anyone has discovered.
If you discover it, you will be one of the richest people on Earth. So now we're going to get into some of this game theory stuff. We're going to talk about this with some mechanical details. First off, the word game is a problem because a bunch of pedantic nerds are at conventions like this. You're probably thinking about what is a game, what isn't a game. Nerds get really spun up about saying a game they don't like isn't a game. Well, Richard Garfield, you might have heard of him, Magic the Gathering, etc.
It's funny how much we talk about Magic the Gathering, a game we haven't played since 1990, whatever. Yeah.
I played Beta Unlimited, and I quit the game when Fallen Empires came out because I thought Magic was done.
Okay. Anyway.
So he came up with a word to use to shut those nerds up. An ortho game is a very specific kind of game. This is a game where there are 2 more players, and the rules will result in ranking the players in some way. You're the best player, you are the worst player.
Right. It could be that one person's the winner and everyone else is the loser. It could be first, second, third, fourth place. It could be you're tied and you're not, but some sort of ranking at the end, right? Not just game's over, everyone had a good time.
So Dungeons and Dragons is a game, but it's not an ortho game unless you're weird.
There's no, yeah, I guess you could add some rules to D&D to where it says, yes, at the end, the character that everyone thought was the funniest wins, right? And then suddenly you're not playing D&D anymore because you've changed the rules, but also, yeah, I guess that could be an ortho game, maybe?
In the year 1997, I participated in Michigan, in Southfield, at a convention called Michicon in a Dungeons & Dragons tournament. And it was as horrifying as you might be imagining. But that is an ortho game. This is a very useful definition because we are only talking about ortho games right now. Fun. I think we need a definition of this. I'm going to say fun is what any given player wants out of the game.
Right.
If the game gives you what you want, you're having fun.
Yeah, fun. I mean, it just depends on who it is, right? Fun is completely contextual based on who is playing the game, right? The exact same game, the exact same experience. One person thinks it was super fun, and the other person says, no, it wasn't fun, even though they experienced literally the identical thing, right? So it's totally in the eye of the gamer whether the game is fun or not, right?
Utility. So there's a big difference between these two. Utility is a game theory term, and it's basically what is the currency with which you reward players who you want to define as having succeeded. It's basically what the game gives you, or a better way to put it, if fun is what you want out of the game, utility is what the game wants you to want out of the game. Counter-Strike wants you to want to click on heads.
Air hockey. Air hockey wants you to hit the puck into the other person's goal. That's what it wants you to do. You might think it's really fun to just like bang the puck back and forth and go click, 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 and it's just really fun to do. Whee! But air hockey doesn't want you to do that. Air hockey wants you to score goals. If you don't feel like sending it to the other person because you want to play with the puck more, right? It's like that might be fun for you, but air hockey doesn't want you to do that. It's
you
not
can already
utility.
see.
Goals are utility.
If there is a disconnect between what some players consider fun versus what the game is telling the players to seek, you can already see where the game can't accommodate this. This is where we get griefing. Griefing is formally when a player is seeking a utility that is different from what the game intends. So my utility in Counter-Strike might be flashbang as many people as possible until I am banned.
Or like, the term griefing, the first time I heard it was in reference to people in MMOs who would kill people and then sort of, camp their corpse and keep killing them every time they came back to the corpse.
Because
right?
that's really funny.
Right. And it's like, that's not winning. That's not utility. The MMO doesn't want you to do that. The MMO wants you to go grind against monsters, get to level 90 billion, and beat some kind of boss off in a castle somewhere. That's what it wants you to do, right? But if that's more fun to just corpse camp somebody, that's griefing.
So this is an old story. This is so old that it's from Overwatch 1. And the ranking system was totally different. But there was a gentleman, people might know this story. There was a gentleman who played Hanzo, who was a sniperish character who, if you're bad at Hanzo, your team hates you. And they're justified in hating you. But this person decided, his name was Hanjo with a J in the game. Do not Google it, you'll see genitalia for unrelated reasons. But his goal
if you want to see genitalia.
You can just type genitalia into Google, and you'll see plenty. His goal was to be the lowest ranked player in the world in Overwatch.
You can tell by the screenshot they succeeded.
Yep, made it to the bottom with our buddy here. But he had a really interesting interview many years ago where he talked about the experience, and you should go find it. It's really, there's a lot going on there. But he said something, and I'm going to give some context for this. At this time in Overwatch, if your rank was around between 30 and 38, that basically put you, if you group all Overwatch players, into 5/5 of ability. This is the second from the bottom. So you're not the worst players in the world, you're the second worst players in the world. And he said, in the mid-30s, I met the angriest people in the world. That is where scrubs live. Scrubs are a whole thing. So people who are truly bad at games almost don't realize how bad they are. Like, they're almost happier for not knowing. And people who are above this, people who are good, they know they're good, or they're at least confident in their abilities. Like, they're good enough. They're outside of that zone. But these are the people who are not getting better, who are angry at the fact that they're not getting better, who believe they should not be there, and who absolutely should be there. And every piece of data we have shows that people in that second fifth of players in any competitive game are just unreasonably angry at all times, and nothing can stop this. Agency. This is another game theory term. In a game, this is what you have control over.
We already discussed Candyland, no agency. The game plays itself, right? And then in chess, basically almost complete agency. You can do anything within the rules, right?
Yep.
It's all up to you. Nothing happens if you don't do anything. You're in control the whole time. Nothing is taken away from you, right? It's all on you. Let's see you win.
Skill. Skill is a word that we want to have a very precise definition for here. Skill is what the game is testing, for example, clicking on heads, over which the players have agency. The casino is not testing anything except patience and how much money you have. But skill, a game like Counter-Strike, it is testing something the players have control over. If you have skill, then you are good at the thing the game is testing, that the game will reward with utility, which in most cases is winning, but might not necessarily be fun.
Right. You can think of a game, a competitive game, right, or a skill-based game, as a ruler that measures a part of a human, right? It might be a game that's really simple, like who has the longest arm, and we can use a literal ruler, right? That's a game.
I don't want to see someone who cheats at that game.
Right. But could it also be a game of like who can run the marathon the fastest, right? Well, it's testing your cardiovascular system, it's testing your leg muscles, it's testing how you're feeling that morning, it's testing did you get sick that morning, did you train well? It's testing so many things, right? But it's a ruler that is measuring a person, and skill is what part of the person, what aspect of that human being are we measuring, and then we'll compare it to the same measurement on another human being on the same day around the same time and see whose measures higher, and that person wins.
And then we rank those players because this is an ortho game. An incentive in a game is what the game rewards with utility. So think back to that Fortnite thing. Killing another player gave you a shield boost. That was the incentive. You were rewarded by seeking the utility of the game. What is the game incentivizing players to do? Forget even ortho games. Think about role-playing games. Dungeons and Dragons, especially older Dungeons and Dragons, incentivizes killing things over most other things you could do just by the nature of how the experience points work. Casual player. Who's the casual? The filthy casuals just want to have fun. Extrinsic enjoyment. Engaging with the game like a toy, like an experience, like entertainment software that it is. Normal people, healthy people, happy people.
Most people.
This is the thing. A lot of competitive players like to shit all over casual players. Like, that's a thing. We all know it's a thing. And some of the things they say are not wrong, but at the same time, they forget that they're the weird ones. We're weird. Most people do not like to lose games over and over and over again. These are normal people. They are not to be made fun of. Most games are made for these people. If you want to make a game and you want it to make money, these are the people you want to go after.
Because
Don't try
it's
to sell a
most
game to
people.
me.
You won't make money going after the weird people. There aren't a lot of them.
Competitive player. All I want is maximizing utility. What's the game? What's the game's utility? I'm going to maximize that. That is all I care about. I am a robot. So now we get into an interesting elaboration. This is from a book called Characteristics of Games, some of the charts I'm about to show. And this is the idea of for how much effort you put into a competitive game that is testing a skill over which you have agency, how much does the game reward that effort? So, roulette. If you play roulette in a casino, there's no more effort you can put in than knowing basic statistics. You cannot try harder and be better.
Unless you try hard enough to get telekinesis. Then you can win at roulette. But otherwise, no, trying harder won't help you.
Or cheat. You could cheat, be super corrupt.
I guess.
Or be the casino.
That's a whole lot of trying.
So think about chess as a good example. If you just play chess randomly, you're not going to do so great. If you learn even a little bit about chess, you'll do better. If you learn an opening, if you learn the first 5 moves of an opening, you'll do radically better.
If you read a book about chess and actually pay attention to what the book says, you will do even better than that.
Another example would be Hearts, a card game. Has anyone here played Hearts? People play like old-time
Microsoft Hearts, yeah, okay.
So if you count cards, if you count how many hearts have been played, you're going to do better. But that takes some mental effort. You're going to get distracted. You might lose the count. You could take a full count of hearts, every single card that was played, and keep that in your head. We know some people who can do this. You know what? You'll do better. But you won't do that much better than someone who just counts the hearts. There's diminishing returns. That chart, you see how it starts to round out. Every increase in effort brings a diminishing return of reward in most games.
So the real question is, does trying help? And how much does trying help?
Yep.
Sometimes trying doesn't help.
And the more a game rewards trying, the more competitive that game is and the less friendly it is to casual players. Chess and Hearts, the 2 good examples. Chess rewards skill way more than Hearts does. People in this room could probably play Hearts perfectly if you concentrated. If you sat at the table, you fully concentrated, you didn't talk, you didn't have a beer, you were focused on the card count, you will do better at Hearts than your friends, up to a point. But Hearts is also random. There's only so many cards. There's 52 of them, in fact. You might just draw a really bad hand. There's nothing you can do. But meanwhile, chess, you can dedicate your entire life to chess and never become the grandmaster. Chess has layers upon layers upon layers. AI is ruining that, but that's a different panel. So the more a game rewards effort, that radically changes the character of the game and the nature of competition within that game. What about return on skill? Remember, skill is testing the thing you are doing over which you have agency. The more a game rewards a particular skill, the more only people who have that skill can even play the game, and you can start to calculate odds like someone who has this skill will always beat someone who doesn't. Someone who can click on heads will always win Counter-Strike, even if the other player is good at every other part of the game.
Yep, sometimes the return on skill is like a complete lock, right? It's like Usain Bolt versus me running. I win 0% of the time, 0, no chance. It could even be old man Usain Bolt versus youngest me, not gonna happen, 0% chance. I will never beat him in running, right? The skill measure is to that degree. But some other games, it's like, I don't know, at a fighting game against somebody who's doesn't really know what they're doing like me, it's like I could beat them 60% of the time. Maybe it's like I am better than them, but not that much better. So it's like I'm still not going to beat them all the time. Like Usain Bolt will always be faster than me, but I'll beat them most of the time.
The more reliably skill is rewarded in a game, the more stratified the players will be, and the more gaps there will be between those players that will limit the ability for people to have fun together. You've all experienced this playing Smash Brothers with anyone.
So a good example would be like, if you look at tennis, right? It's like the best players in the world until they get old tend to just win every tournament. It's like they're winning slam, slam, slam every year until they get old, and then someone else rises up, right? Serena Williams just every time wins, right? Until eventually she gets old and retires. But if you look at, say, something like golf, which has a little bit more weather, a little bit more randomness, a little bit more variance and wind and a little bit of things going in there, the people who are the best at golf, they don't win every single tournament, right? Even Tiger Woods didn't win every tournament, right? He won a bunch, but he wasn't winning every single one, right? It's like there was a lot of percentage chance of Tiger Woods winning, very high, You know, I think a question a lot of people used to ask when he was like at his peak was like, who you got this week? Is Tiger Woods going to win or is someone else going to win? And it's a tough question, right? Because like even though we're all agreeing that he's the best, it's not like 100% lock he's going to win.
So what happens when we add randomness back into that game? A lot of games have a lot of randomness in it, and you'll find casual players really tend to prefer games that have a lot of randomness, even if they will never admit this to you. The more randomness you inject into a game, the less return on skill there is. This is like a hard law, like the second law of thermodynamics. More randomness means less return on skill. Poker. Best poker player in the world is only going to win a few percentage points more often than the millionth best poker player in the world. Fortnite, what really happened here, if you zoom all the way back out with all these concepts, is they looked at this tiny base of players who got really loud on the internet. If you just looked at the internet when they made this patch and then they rolled it back, you would believe that everyone in Fortnite is quitting, this game is ruined, we're done with this game, you hate the competitive community, we're all leaving. And meanwhile, Fortnite said, yeah, actually, we have more people playing now after you all left than we ever did. We were right to kick you out of our game.
Well, if their goal was to get the most players and the most money, yes, they were right to kick them out.
Yep. But that is their goal. Fortnite before rewarded skill more and thus made it not fun for people who didn't have skill. Fortnite after rewarded skill less. It still rewards skill. The better players tend to win Fortnite at the end, but it has all these other side effects. By not rewarding them that strongly, the game goes on longer and all these other non-skill things come into play. So we're going to do a whole different segment now. Let's imagine games that highly reward skill and drive this to its ultimate fatal conclusion, which is basically that. Games that reward skill to a high degree become terrifying in ways you're not even thinking about. It's not just, I'm going to lose against Scott some of the time. I'm going to lose against Scott 100% of the time. There is nothing I can do.
Right. If the game is whose arm is the longest, you can't grow your arm unless you're really young, right? It's like you automatically lose to someone better than you. Your only way to ever win is to somehow improve your own human self, either your mind by studying and practicing, or your body by exercising, or both, right? Or something else, if it's some other weird game that uses some other part of the body other than the brain or the muscles.
It's even worse than that. Oh, let's say I want to play basketball against LeBron. It's not even like, well, I'm going to play basketball against him, but I'm going to lose in the end. I'm not even going to touch the ball. He's just going to slap it out of my hands every time I touch it. I won't even be able to play the game. Like those Fortnite kids. They're like really excited. They start to build their base, and then two 40-year-olds just headshot them, game over.
Right. This is really the core of what ruins the fun for most casual people in a competitive game, is that you don't get to play, right? They don't rush me, I want to build my base, right? People just want to play. I'm playing Magic the Gathering, I put in a big monster that's like a 20/20 and costs 10 mana. I have to get to turn 10 to use that, right? If I'm dead on turn 2 to a Channel Fireball because it's 1993, okay? Right, I didn't even get to play Magic. All I did was shuffle my deck, sit there, and then cry. So, right,
yep.
People who don't even care about winning, they at least want to play, right? Imagine if like, I'm gonna go play with my Legos, and then every time you take them out of the closet, someone who's better at Legos just puts them back in the closet. Right? That's what happens.
Efficiency starts to beat out anything fun. Now, this is a game theory concept, the concept of a Pareto frontier, or a Pareto line. The idea being, you can choose a bunch of players. Well, yeah, I have a fun thing there. So you can choose characters in the game, let's say. If there is a character or an option in a game that is just worse than all other options, like a certain character, let's say, I needed that laugh. One person laughs at this every time.
Okay.
So if he is just worse than the other options, he will never be picked. Think about Overwatch and the meta. If Bastion's not in the meta, you might like playing Bastion. But if Bastion's not competitively viable because Bastion is just worse than all the other options based on the current rule set, then picking Bastion is stupid. and you will never pick Bastion. You can't play the things you like, you have to play the things that win. If there's a Marvel Snap deck that's hot because the Blob is super overpowered, you'd better be playing the Blob.
He got nerfed today.
He just got nerfed,
Get out of here! Get out of here, Blob.
So in old-timey baseball, there was a lot of stuff that used to happen that doesn't really happen anymore. This happens in any game. All these fun systems. You're not going to see a pickle in a modern Major League Baseball game that often.
You see one a couple times, you know,
yeah,
here and
but
there.
It's rare.
It used to be constant.
Baseball over time evolved into having a very small number of true outcomes. Either he's going to hit a home run or he's not, and he's going to get struck out. There's very few things that actually matter. And once you make a game wholly competitive, anything that is not at the top of the meta and super relevant to winning the game at all costs becomes completely meaningless. Doesn't matter what gun you're using in Counter-Strike. If you're good enough, a deagle's good enough. You're going to click on heads and you're going to win. A game might test a lot of skills. Another Counter-Strike example. But if one of those skills matters more than the rest, it is the only skill that matters. I cannot stress this enough. Any game you play, all the skills it tests, there's probably one that matters more. If you want to beat your friends and ruin your life, just max that skill out and ignore everything else. There's actually a little aside here. It doesn't matter if the other person's cheating or not in Counter-Strike. If that's an aimbot or not, it doesn't matter because it is possible for a human to be that good. A human who is good at a game that you could have an aimbot in isn't different than an aimbot against any player who's bad at that game. A meta is going to emerge, and that meta is going to focus only on a very small subset of the things you could choose in that game. How many competitively viable decks are there in Marvel Snap right now?
I don't know, 5 or 6, right? It's like there aren't that many choices. You know, if you think, you know, the way you have to think about it is you look at the way most games balance things, right? It's like you usually have characters or cards and they have stats, right? You know, StarCraft is always the easiest example. It's like we've got the one that's slow but strong, and we got the one that's fast but weak, and then we have the one that's in the middle, right? What if there was one that was just as strong or maybe just a little bit less strong than the Protoss, right? But they're quite a bit faster. It's like, well, that just sort of makes them just better, right? It's like the total amount of strength and speed, if you're only looking at those two factors, needs to be on the level, right? If there's any discrepancy whatsoever to where the total strength plus speed combination puts them out ahead of the rest, that's it. That's the only viable one. No one's going to even use the other ones. They're just worthless.
And it gets even worse. Now, you've got to look at whatever the choices are in the game. We'll use the characters as an example because MOBAs and games like Overwatch are popular. The characters that have high skill caps, the character that rewards skill more will become the only competitively viable character over time. Mm-hmm. A good example of this is in the console version of Overwatch, the Torbjorn's turret, he puts a turret down and it auto shoots. They had to make it less good because without a mouse and keyboard, it was just too powerful otherwise. Meanwhile, in competitive pro Overwatch, nobody touches Torb. Nobody's playing that character. Mm. So snipers, really competitively viable at high-skill games. Not usable in low-skill games, but anyone who's even slightly good at a sniper in a low-skill game is going to dominate everyone else in the match.
Yep, sniping is high skill. It's difficult to do, right? So therefore, right, if you choose a sniper character and you're not any good, you're just going to die and not hit anyone, right? Because you basically get one shot, it's really slow, and you have to aim precisely. It's difficult to do in most FPS games. But if you can actually do it, if you have that skill, if you're in your magical hand that's way better and more steadier than my hand is and faster at clicking, then you're just going to dominate. Who's going to compete with you, right? Whereas another character, maybe they have some sort of, spray and pray weapon. It's like, yeah, it's easier to be that character. You don't need as much skill to at least do some damage, to live a little while, to maybe kill one person, right? But the best you can do with them is sort of spray and pray. You can't just eliminate the other team because it's not that strong, right? So it doesn't matter how hard a thing is to do, right? Whichever one is the strongest is always going to dominate, and anything else, you might include it because it's easy in your game design and you want players with less skill to be able to choose those meta unless their maximum strength is at the peak.
But here's the subtle problem here. Only the meta at the top matters. because the meta at the top consumes the entire game. They can't make all the characters act completely differently in silver compared to gold compared to platinum. The game's the game. The Torbjorn change was a specific exception because they can segregate console players from everybody else to avoid that problem. But as soon as we get like weight classes or something in games like this, it doesn't quite work out.
Oh,
So
we've determined that you can actually aim, and therefore all these characters are now going to be stronger if you use them, but if you use the sniper, we're going to make it less powerful just for you, because we know that you can aim. This guy, he can't aim, we'll let him have a sniper rifle that does 1 million damage. He ain't going to hit anyone anyway.
Yep, so the entire game now has to be designed solely around what the top 500 players are doing and what meta emerges from the ultimate exploration of maximum human skill. A bunch of bullshit that sucks suddenly matters a lot. If you want to be competitive in Pokemon 1, you should cheat. I encourage you. Don't make broken, illegal characters, but don't actually grind this stuff out.
Your life is too short.
But if you want to be good at a game like this, you're playing a game fully competitively. Think about last hitting in some MOBAs. That sucks, right? That's a weird mechanic.
Some people like it.
Yeah, some people do like it. I think they're weird.
Me too.
But that fiddly thing that does not matter for most players becomes the only thing that matters. IV and EV training are the only thing that matter in competitive Pokemon play because the metas emerge, everyone knows how all the Pokemon go. No professional Pokemon player is going to make a mistake with their Charmander.
I think Pokemon's evolved past just EVs and IVs, but haven't paid attention. So
Well, there's a big scandal right now because they've determined that almost every competitive Pokemon player is using
good.
hacked
They
characters.
should be. Yes,
They
They're
absolutely
smart.
should be.
Yeah.
Because again, an aimbot is not different from a high skill player from the perspective of the other player. So if you make games fully competitive, truly competitive, eventually every game's a draw. Partly because if matchmaking is actually good, if matchmaking were perfect, then everyone is always equally matched to everyone they ever play, and every game is going to be a draw, and it's going to come down to the fiddly subsystems, the sub-pixels. That's the only thing that'll matter. We've seen this in chess. The meta of chess has evolved to the point that the pro players cannot force a win. The best strategy in chess, if you are a pro in the top tier, is to try to force a draw. Because if you can force a draw, that's the best thing you can force.
Let's just continue.
We'll take questions at the end if we have time. This one's a tricky one. Spectators need to know more about the game, the more competitive it is. We were at a PAX way back when they had a MOBA tournament. And they did this MOBA tournament, and there was a moment where something happened on the screen. And a few people cheered, but nobody else reacted. And then everyone else cheered because those few people were cheering. Meanwhile, professional football, the NFL. Even if, let's imagine you are a barbarian brute, and all you care about is people getting hurt. You don't know how football works. You have no knowledge of football. You watch football, and a bunch of dudes are beating the crap out of each other. You can enjoy it on that visceral level. You don't need to know what's going on. At best, a football fan needs to know that team's trying to move it that way, that team's trying to move it that way, and they can hit each other along the way, and they can throw this ball. And you'll enjoy it. But what the hell's going on there? To watch a competitive esport, you've either got to be a player of that esport who knows what's going on, or that esport has to have the best commentary to explain what the hell is going on to a normal person. Mm-hmm. In a competitive game, and actually in any game, the concept of catching up doesn't exist. There's no such thing as being behind.
Right, so in this Chutes and Ladders illustration, right, who is in first place? A or B?
Who thinks A is in first place right now? Everyone's looking very confused. Who thinks B is in first place right now?
Oh, you think that? So you think the odds of B rolling a 1 are that high?
The actual answer is we can't know unless we know how A and B move. Let's say we're rolling a D2 or a D4 or a D6. B is probably winning. Let's say we're rolling a D100. Well, A is probably winning. Say we're rolling a D1000. The game's completely random and that ladder doesn't matter at all.
D1000, that's impressive that one of them rolled like a 5 and one of them rolled a 2.
But game designers for competitive games really have to understand that there's no such thing as catching up. Rubber band mechanics are part of the game. The blue shell exists. That's part of the game. If you're a professional Mario Kart player, you're taking into account the fact that the blue shell exists.
Right. When Mario Kart might say, you're in first, it's like, no, you're not. The blue shell exists. Unless the finish line is right in front of you, it's lying to you, right? You're probably in second or third because a blue shell is going to come. Right? Same thing. If you're in last place, are you really in last place in Mario Kart? No, you're probably in like second or third to last because you're going to get a star or something, right? And it's going to happen.
Most players in your game will not want skill to matter. And in a competitive game, there's no ego shield. There's nothing to shield the ego of the fragile person from the consequences of them being bad at the game. So a truly competitive player in a competitive game will lose and be put in bronze rank, and they're fine with that because they're trying to get better. But the scrubs are going to freak out.
Right. So if you play Smash Brothers with a whole bunch of items and you lose because someone grabbed a Pokeball and something ridiculous came out of it, it's like, ha ha ha, you got lucky, right? And that they don't have to, but they can go home even though they lost. They don't have to believe that they are worse at the game than their friend is. Right? They can go home believing, I'm better than my friend, or at least as good as them. I just happened to lose because they got lucky with the Pokeball, right? If they had played Final Destination, Fox only, no items, high skill game, and they lose, they're left with nothing to protect their ego. There is only one truth that they must come to face, which is your friend is better than you. You suck, get good. And they don't want to face that truth if that is the truth. And so they don't like those kind of games, and when they play them, they're unhappy.
And that means you won't be able to sell your game to anyone except the weirdos. Now, there are limits of skill and effort and basic technique. And this is where we start getting into more advanced thoughts of what a full competitive game is. Let's say everyone is perfect at the game. It's all Neos in the Matrix fighting with each other.
Hockey, it's just all Wayne Gretzky's, all Michael Jordans.
Yep.
Right?
Every goalie in the league is Igor Shesterkin. Like, the teams are perfectly balanced. Everyone's equal. Everyone is the maximum skill that physics and human genetics allow. What happens in the game then? Well, turns out there are only 3 possible outcomes for any ortho game. Either the game is just random at that point.
Right, there could be still, even though it's a high-skill game, there could still be some random factor in it. It's not such a strong random factor that it's like a decider or the only thing that decides the game, but it could still be something. Like we talked about, the wind in golf might end up deciding something, right?
Yep. But if you play Yahtzee absolutely perfectly, and everyone else at the table plays mathematically perfectly, the only thing that determines who wins is the random dice rolls. Literally, that is it. You are testing the randomness of the universe at that point. So, does anyone know in this room what happens in Nintendo 64 Smash Brothers if 2 players, 2 characters, same character, attack each other on the same exact frame,
at the same distance,
right. Same distance, identical situation? Some people have raised their hands. Yell it out if you know the answer. Yes, if your controller's plugged into fucking port number 1, you win. Port priority. It is arbitrary.
It has to be the exact same frame, the exact same distance, the exact same everything. And then if it's really, you're the same character, the same everything, then the person who's got their controller plugged into port 1, their punch will land and the other person will get hit.
So that is the if we go to this extreme, like we said, we're going to say, let's make this game fully competitive. The best players in the world, it's going to come down to what physically they're plugged into. So now the only thing that matters is how do we determine who is plugged into port 1 versus port 2?
I think what you have to do in a case like this, you would have to play like at least 4 games where everyone gets a turn. You basically do every possible combination of players plugged into the 4 ports, right? So that everyone has their chance at being, priority number 1.
Or politics come in. Politics is a game theory term. We're not talking about the hell world out there. We're talking about the hell world inside of games. So politics is the fact that any game that is not a race, where players can interact with each other and there's more than 2 players. So like,
or 2 sides.
Yeah,
could be because 2 teams still counts as 2, right?
So like Risk or any game, any Root, any of those games. Politics is the interaction between players. Let's say in a war game, I attack Scott on my turn. And then on Joey Jojo Shabadoo's turn, They also attack Scott. Well, now Scott's behind through no fault of his own.
I could be the best player there ever was, right? But because everyone else knows that I'm the best player that there ever was, they gang up on me. There's no decision I can make. There's no skill I can have where I could be so strong to overcome two good players who are teaming up against me in a 3-player game, right?
Yep.
So I'm losing not because my skill isn't good enough or I'm unlucky, just because I've been voted out by politics, right? There's a vote who wins element in the game, and I've been voted against, and that's the end of that.
And this vote who wins element is in every interactive game that has more than 2 players that are not on 2 equal teams. All games have this. And the more politics is involved in the game, that reduces the impact of skill and ends up making the game not random, but socially arbitrary. If you play Werewolf or Mafia, you'll see certain people tend to just get murdered every round for some reason. Or every game will be a draw, as we're seeing in professional chess, where at the top tiers, it's draw after draw after draw after draw. So Epic chose their audience because most people are not crazy like this, and most people do not want to play games that have gone down that terrifying hell road that we just described to all of you. So let's think a little bit in the last 5 minutes we've got here. There's really 3 audiences for games, if we really boil it down. There's the casual players who want to have fun, the competitive players who want to win, and people who want to watch games, the spectators. They are left out of most games conversations. They're left out of panels like this. Spectation is a very important part of games. I mean, there's a speedrun thing going on like right over there, right now.
Most of the people in the room are watching. Only like one person's playing.
Yep.
Yeah.
But these audiences want radically different things. The casual players want to have fun. The competitive players want all that stuff we talked about. The spectators just want to be entertained. It doesn't matter if the players have fun to the spectators. The NHL players don't need to be having fun. They're paid to entertain me, the person who bought a ticket to watch them play. So the dynamics of these 3 audiences are a topic that you could spend years studying in academia, and I think people will be over the next several decades. So why don't we accommodate these? Why don't we make a game where the casual players have fun, the competitive players have fun, and it's fun to watch other people play? I don't think we can. Can anyone name a game that's done this? Does anyone think there's a game that has done this?
No. Imagine if you like, I play Rocket League and I enjoy it, right? But I can't do any aerial things whatsoever, right? It's like if I try to go up in the sky, it's just like and the ball flies past me, right? So it's like, you know, effectively when it comes to Rocket League, I'm a casual, and if anyone actually can do any aerial thing whatsoever, I will never score a goal on them ever, right?
But even worse, watching Rocket League, I like watching Rocket League, it's real fun. You really want to watch the competitive players. You want to watch the people who are really good at the game. It's not like awesome games done slow. Now, those kinds of things exist. You know, long plays exist, but that is for the spectators and the casual players. The competitive speedrunner probably can't watch a long play without freaking out. So we have 2 minutes left. What was the point of all this? We touched on like 15 different topics here along the way of saying it's impossible to accommodate these audiences. It really just comes down to community. This is a life advice. If you're part of a community like MAGFest or Star Wars or Bionic Commando Rearmed, the Speedrunner, like whatever community you're in, you should really think about what is it about that thing that you are engaging with and why. Understand what role you play in the community, and rather than seeking people who like the same thing, find people who like things for the same reasons.
Right? If you like, you know, game A because you like to win at it, right? You're going to have a better friend in someone who likes game B and likes to win at it than you will have in someone who also likes game A and doesn't give a shit about winning, right? Find people who have the same why as you do, right? To create peace and harmony, right? And if you're making a game, think about what the why is and find only those people, right? Maybe you want to make a competitive game and only have 5 sales. Go ahead, right? Maybe you want to make a lot of money. Make sure your game is not competitive in any way, shape, or form, right? But just keep these things in mind. Or maybe you've discovered the game that accommodates both that hasn't been discovered yet.
I just realized we're going to see FPSs that the scrubs are only playing against AIs that boost their ego, and that's the entire game. They never encounter a human. That's going to exist.
That already exists.
Yeah, but it's going to exist at scale.
Okay.
Anyway, we are out of time. I hope this was enjoyable.
Okay. We have more panels. If you really want to waste your MAGFest to come and see us again, here are times when you can come and see us again. We
Tonight
also have
at 8 p.m. in this same room, myself and my partner, Emily here, will be talking about the family game dev business and how to make games and build things with your friends and family instead of at